Hello, BookTube. I thought I'd do a book haul. It might get a little noisy out here. This is actually one of the two little rooms that are on either side of my porch. They're not really practical for anything. This is a pretty old house, about 190 years old, and who knows why these rooms even exist. But a lot going on in the house, so this is my wife's office, actually. So I thought I'd do a haul. I went out today. Last night got caught going to get my son at camp in huge thunderstorms and flash floods. So it seems to be the theme here in Vermont this summer. But we made it back just fine. So I went out today on some errands and managed to stop at the Listen thrift store in I think it's Lebanon, not West Lebanon, but it's either Lebanon or West Lebanon, New Hampshire. And the exciting thing is we have a Books A Million in West Lebanon that I've gone to. We have a comic shop, a Newberry comic shop there. But today when we went, we noticed in another mall they're almost done building a Barnes & Noble. So for me, that'll be exciting, especially for the newsstand. So my little town my little village I live in has about 215 families. And then my town, which is much bigger geographically, has about 2,700 people. So we drive a lot. We have no box stores of any kind within any distance of us that's reasonable. So it takes about 45 minutes to get to West Leb, and They have a lot. They're even getting a Jersey Mike's, so I'm very excited that I can see what all the excitement's about. So well, let's get to the books. The first one I've seen before, never owned. This thing originally cost 95 cents. I spent $1 on each one of these things. So this is Randall Jarrell, Poetry in the Age, a vintage book. And here on the back says, in a now famous essay, The Age of Criticism, reprinted in this book, Mr. Jarrell describes a type of criticism increasingly rare these days, which is both intelligent and useful, and which sounds as if it had been written by a reader for readers, by a human being for human beings, not as if it had been written by a syndicate of encyclopedias for an audience of international business machines. Seems sort of funny to hear that with word. And so when was this? This paperback, at least, if I can get a date here. This is 1953, and it's been reprinted once. We're talking about AI now. I wonder what he thought of that. So a collection of poetry essays. One here is some lines by Whitman, The Age of Criticism, the Laodiceans, The Other Frost. We're talking about Robert Frost there. The Obscurity of the Poet. So really looking forward to this. Like I say, I've seen it before, but never owned a copy. Another one I'm really excited about is this. And this is Joseph Conrad, A Personal Record, and then The Mirror of the Sea. And these are the Penguin 20th Century Classics. And these are his nonfiction works. Conrad is a largely enigmatic presence in his novels, but in A Personal Record, 1908-1909, he decided to introduce his readers to the figure behind the veil. And almost equally revealing is The Mirror of the Sea, written in a tribute to the sea, its ships, and its men, which, of course, he was a professional mariner. I've never read either of these. I'm very excited to read these. So, and most of you know how much I love nautical stuff, and we will see. And then in the same series, the Penguin 20th Century Classics, is his Heart of Darkness, and also has Congo Diary. And so in Conrad's haunting tale, Marlowe, a seaman and wanderer, recounts his physical and psychological journey in search of the enigmatic Kurtz. And then they don't really say much about Congo Diary here. So Congo Diary is really short. You can see it here. A little example of it, and it's this much of the book. So we'll see what it is. I'm not familiar with it. And then this next one, the Bread Loaf Diary. Bread Loaf is a writer's, and it is a Bread Loaf anthology, a contemporary American short story. And Bread Loaf's very famous get-together over in the other side of the Vermont for Robert Frost used to be involved, and Jay Perini, who's one of the editors here, has long been associated with it. So the Bread Loaf Writer Conference in Middlebury College. So let me see who we've got. This came out from the University Press of New England. And let's see. When did this come out? It's right here on this page, I'm sure. 1987. So I'll just give you an idea of some. You could pause it to see if I get my finger out of the way, if you'd like. But I'll read some of the names to you. So you have Harold Brodkey, Rosalind Brown, Raymond Carver, Richard Ford. I'm just going to Mark Halperin, who I really like. John Irving, short story Trying to Save Piggy Sneed. Joyce Carol Oates, Surf City. Tim O'Brien, Cynthia Ozick, Francine Pose, John Updike. So it's quite a list. Glad to have it. It's a little dirty, but it'd be a good addition. I like these short story collections when they're like that, with those kinds of names, because I just sit down and read one at a time. I've got piles of books going right now. I've done pretty well this year, but I picked a couple. Hermione Lee's for Virginia Woolf biography I'm reading right now and loving. And then I'm reading Brown's autobiography, Peter Brown, the late antiquity historian, biographer. He's a biographer of Augustine of Hippo. And I'm reading that, and that's really good. So then this next one here, because I'll grab these Europa editions, a lot of time they're a good bet. Not always, but a lot of times they are. And I'm going to do a number on this gentleman's name. Roberto, I can do that. Taraboschi is what I'm saying. So you won't offend me if you tell me I mispronounced it. So this is translated from the Italian by Catherine Gregor, and The Apothecary's Shop, a novel of Venice, 1118 AD. Sounds fascinating to me. A medieval Venice ravaged by famine and orgiastic revelries, the protagonist of The Apothecary's Shop explores the depths of the city and the paths to the supernatural in their search for a missing child. So we'll see. I imagine many of you have read this. Europa editions are usually pretty popular. Then, these next two are both by the same author. I believe I've read this first one, but when you're my age, sometimes these things get away from you. And that's William Styron, A Tidewater Morning. And there's our author, and that looks a little odd. So in these stories, never before published in book form, William Styron focuses his unmatched talents on matters that had preoccupied him during much of his adult writing career. Although their immediate subjects are different, a young Marine about to invade Japan in World War II remembers the role his father played in building one of the ships. A child recalls what happened when a former slave came home to die in the place where he was born. And a boy describes the hot summer day on which his mother died, changing his life forever. The stories are told in the voice of the same narrator, who remembers vividly his youth in a tidewater town in Virginia. It sounds fascinating. This is an author I enjoy, though I haven't read him in years. This was a Random House book, and this came out in 1993. So I think I have read it, but it's not. Or maybe I just saw it and think I read it. This next one's also by him, and this is Darkness Visible, a Memoir of Madness. And this is Random House, New York, and this is 1990. In the summer of 1985, William Styron was overtaken by a persistent insomnia and a troubling sense of malaise, the first signs of a deep depression that would engulf his life and leave him on the brink of suicide. In Darkness Visible, a great novelist describes his devastating descent into depression, taking us on an unprecedented journey into the realm of madness. Expanded from his celebrated Vanity Fair piece, this moving memoir is an intimate portrait of the agony of his ordeal. So, yeah, there we go. Now, this one, not only have I read, I've read this translation, and I used to have it. And this is the Steigmuller translation of Flaubert's Madame Bovary. And I'm glad to find it again. I had more than one of his books. So many of you know this story. This was Random House. I said it was going to be a little noisy out here. 1957. So I think it has these little spot illustrations. But I remember really liking the translation, so happy to have that. Then the last two are Civil War related, American Civil War. The first one is James M. McPherson, whose Battle Cry of Freedom is, to me, one of the best Civil War books I've ever read, and I haven't read them all, obviously. But this is Abraham Lincoln, a short little thing. I read a book of his recently that was short on Gettysburg Battlefield. So this is Abraham Lincoln. There's the end papers there. And this thing is Oxford University Press, and it's 2009. Probably the Brady photograph there, but I'm speaking out of turn, I don't know that for sure. Marking the 200th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, the marvelous short biography by leading historian offers an illuminating portrait of one of the giants in the American story. Well, that's certainly very true. See if they have any other illustrations. I think that might be it. So, yeah, we'll see. Nice, quick read. And the other one, I have this in paperback, but I saw this old hardback, and I just had to grab it. And you've probably seen this novel mentioned many times on Steve Donahue's channel. I always think of him when I see it. This is The Killer Angels by Michael Shaara. This old hardback, and there he is. Gibson's Bookstore, Used Fiction. I don't know. So this is about a novel about the 4 days of Gettysburg. Opens up here with a wonderful map of the battlefield. And then it's fiction, but there's maps throughout. And this is just absolutely a masterpiece of historical fiction. So let's see here. In July 1863, all that month there is heat and wild rain. The Army of Northern Virginia is invading the North. Cherries are ripening in Pennsylvania, and the men eat handfuls of them as they march. The civilians have fled. The houses are dark. The armies move north through the heat and the dust. General Robert E. Lee has made this daring, massive movement into the north because he is determined to draw out the Army of the Potomac so that he may mortally wound it. He has almost 70,000 men, and they weren't enough. So, yeah, nice old copy, huh? When was this? David McKay Incorporated in New York, and it's 1974. So, not a bad book haul. This video went a little longer than I like, but so Killer Angels, by Michael Shaara, James McPherson's Abraham Lincoln, the Steigmuller translation of Madame Bovary, to William Styron, Darkness Visible, about depression, and then a collection of 3 tales, Tidewater Morning, a Europa edition, Robert Tarabowski, I hope I'm saying that right. The Apothecary's Shop, a novel of Venice in 1118 AD. Then an anthology from the Bread Loaf Writers Conference with some good names. Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness, and then some nonfiction by Joseph Conrad, A Personal Record and The Mirror of the Sea, and then a collection of poetry criticism by Randall Jarrell. So there you go. Pretty good day's work. Hope everyone's doing well. And thank you, BookTube.